Well, we were recording, so I'll go ahead and kick off. Welcome, everyone, to our third Basecamp session. We're excited to have everyone join us. Very excited to have Marcus Lingenfelter from Edmentum join us today to talk about an exciting new initiative they've been working on in Oklahoma. And I believe his audio keeps going in and out, but we do have Ryan Walters, the new Secretary of Education in Oklahoma, will be joining and listening in as well. So we're really excited to have you. Again, we are recording. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to put them in the chat. The format, for those of you who may be new, we'll do 10 minutes presentation, 10 minutes where I'll dig in a little deeper with Marcus, and then we'll have 10 minutes at the end for Q&A with the audience. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Marcus, I'll turn it over to you, and if you want to share your screen and do the presentation, we'll get going.
And good afternoon, everyone. While we're waiting, thanks for the opportunity to brief you on our Oklahoma response mission. I was going to say we're missing our colleague who has been my partner in crime for the last 6 months, but Secretary Walters appears to be fading in and out from his bunker in Oklahoma. Ryan has been exceptionally effective colleague to work with, as I'm sure you all have had a similar experience. One point of note, which I think is important given the context, my career prior to Edmentum was 25 years of military nonprofit organizations and universities. So I'm very much a mission-driven type of person. And my role at Edmentum is rather unique insofar as I get to look for opportunities for us to deploy our programs and capabilities that produce better outcomes for social missions like urban education, military connected schools, American Indian, Alaska Native students, and specifically about preparing a more agile workforce. And I know a more agile workforce is, of course, of primary concern to this organization. Let's see if I can get this to advance. So Jamie Candy's our CEO, and she was supposed to be with you. I apologize that you get me as a substitute, but Jamie returned to Edmentum 3 years ago, having been CEO of Questar, and she made the prime directive, which is I love because I'm a Trekkie, not a Star Wars guy. The prime directive is educator first. It helps that a majority of the Edmentum 1,000-person worldwide workforce are and or were educators or administrators, but educators have a central role in all of our program design, improvements, and deployments, and they are, frankly, a core part of every discussion, even at the executive team level that I've been a part of. We have had discussions and the question is raised, is this educator first? So it is a litmus test for how we operate as an organization. 60 years ago, the National Science Foundation and the Department of Defense did a sponsored research project at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. We were the result or a result of that project. In fact, the original Plato computer terminal sits in the Computer Science Hall of Fame in Silicon Valley. We have continued to make acquisitions and innovations over the last 6 decades. By the way, 6 decades, 60 years ago. We are the oldest digital education organization in the world. And we are headquartered in the Twin Cities, right there in Amy's backyard. We serve 8,000 LEA partners here in the United States, in all 50 states, as well as a host of adult and juvenile correctional facilities, international schools. Essentially everywhere learning occurs, our programs are being utilized in one form or another. We sit at the intersection of digital curriculum, assessment, instruction, and services. You might imagine in this current environment that we're living in, the instruction and the services pieces have been exceptionally useful. We have advised many LEAs and other organizations on how to build out capabilities to meet the needs of this multimodality world that we live in. I would like to say my brother is a Lutheran minister, as is my nephew, and they'd be proud for me to say, those LEAs that we served beforehand, we helped them build the ark before the rain started. And many of them just expanded what they were doing or expanded grades, but they have had very eased transition in this COVID environment. Those LEAs that have been late to adopt have had a much more challenging situation, as you might imagine. We do provide a full K-12 set of capabilities on a single scalable platform. This does differentiate us from other organizations that have piecemeal or multiple programs but don't serve the full K-12. This was a nice to have in a pre-COVID environment. I would argue that in this COVID world, ease of use for the end user stakeholders is very important, and we have found many of our partners transition away from other capabilities to us so that all is on one program. Now to the real meat and potatoes. The threat was identified early as epic levels of learning loss brought on by the sudden and wholesale shutdown of schooling in the state of Oklahoma. The threat response needed to be universal in nature, but not a one-size-fits-all in orientation. The SEA leaders, I will say, viewed themselves as, quote, an educational FEMA deploying in a moment of crisis. So much in the way FEMA is making sure that bread, food, and water and cots are deployed where the emergency has happened. The SEA took a very different approach than they normally do. They don't do top-down in Oklahoma. They really saw this as a moment in time where they had to take on a different view. The solution set in question is a program that we created called ExactPath. It is computer adaptive, it is K-12, and includes a digital assessment and corresponding state-aligned content delivered in a highly precise learning path prescription for the domains of math, ELA, and reading. But one point of note, it is down to the discrete skill level. And as we look to a post-COVID reform environment where we want mastery versus simply trotting along on the grade level scale, this I think is a very important, useful skill that we are able to identify at the skill level. And when I talk about precision, so I walked into the doctor's office and he did a few tests and he said, you know what, I think you may have severed your shoulder, but we don't know. Had to go get an MRI for them to see very clearly what happened. We need these kind of capabilities for our educators, for them to understand exactly where their students are. My son, for example, was advanced in ELA, but behind in math. And the program has the ability to address both remediation, those who are behind maybe on specific skill levels, or are advanced, or maybe a little bit of both. This is especially relevant for Algebra 1, as you might imagine, missing math skills from previous grades that can be remediated while the student is enrolled in an Algebra 1 class in real time. I like to call it differentiation or personalization at scale. It helps accommodate a gifted teacher, but the brand new teacher or the teacher who is currently overwhelmed because of the modality changes, or a teacher who's overwhelmed by larger class sizes or the variety of learning levels in their classroom, this type of capability will even it out where every learner will get precisely what they need to fill their holes or move them forward depending upon where they are. State Superintendent Hoffmeister, in collaboration with the governor, deployed CARES funding to provide this universal adoption for all 700,000 public school students. It was a relatively short turnaround time, and I say short in the terms of anyone who's worked with government contracting. The machinery of government does not work quickly, but they really did take on an emergency approach strategy on how to get it done. So far, we've experienced about a 90% adoption rate by the LEAs, and LEAs are already asking for at least a second year of program utilization, especially in light of the unpredictability of the pandemic in the 21 calendar and the 21-22 school year. Prior to full deployment, the state superintendent was already articulating the need and advocating for this solution set with in-state stakeholders, mostly legislators and superintendents, but also was doing some advocacy at the state and national level, including a stint at the Hunt Institute Forum. Consequently, North Dakota State Superintendent Kirsten Baszler has since deployed the same program statewide in her jurisdiction. She took the extra added step to make sure that private school, homeschool, and BIE students were covered. So no matter where the learner rests in the state of North Dakota, they are covered. Since all of this, Oklahoma Governor Stitt and our friend and colleague Secretary Walters have taken additional unprecedented action to establish Learn Anywhere Oklahoma. It is far more comprehensive in its approach strategy, but it is perfect complement to this SEA COVID learning loss relief mission that we have embarked upon. We had the pleasure of having Ryan and State Superintendent Hoffmeister present to the Edmentum all-company meeting last month. We have nearly 1,000 Edmentors worldwide, and when they get to hear from individuals like Ryan and Joy about the direct impact of what our programs are able to do in the lives of students, it is quite remarkable. We've already seen growth measures, but it's too early to come out with a lot of success data. I would love to come back or provide data to this group in 6 months or longer to show just how effective this particular set of capabilities were at addressing the COVID learning loss that we all experienced. And that, I think, is up to my 10 minutes on the dot, Eric. So I'm going to loop back to you.
That's great. Thank you. So let's dig in a little bit. What does this look like on a day-to-day basis for the teacher and the student?
Yeah, so the program is considered supplemental rather than core instruction. It is used in a variety of formats. Some use it only weekly for 20, 30 minutes of use per subject. Some schools, Clark County has schools that use the program every single day. It can be used on any device, anywhere, and it's perfect for this modality change where you're in the building, you're not in the building, you're at home, you're wherever you are, you have access to this and continue working on your learning path. It gives you four program pieces to work at in a time, so it's manageable chunks instead of dumping all of it on you. And the learner's manager, so the educator or parent, can see the full range of skills that need to be acquired, but the learner does not see that so as to not be discouraging in any way. This program has been deployed in New York City to their most disadvantaged school buildings, specifically because of the highly precise manner in which it can remediate the skills. And
so can you give us a sense of what conditions have to be in place for this to work already? I mean, you mentioned that it's supplemental, so instruction has to be happening, but what are the conditions that need to be in place for this to work well? And well, I think you could stop sharing your screen.
Yep, let me stop sharing. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Here we go. So the reality is, Eric, it's highly flexible. I have my son working on it independent of what his school district does. Now, it doesn't take, I'm not a curriculum instruction expert and I'm not a tech genius. It wasn't not hard to stand him up on that program, which is why State Superintendent Basler deployed in North Dakota for all students, regardless of what their condition is. It is regularly used by educators to help them differentiate, to help them group. There's a lot of features and a lot of content within the program that will help educators better serve their students' needs to be exactly where they are. But it does not require that the teacher be involved. It can be done independent. It's used by a host of military-connected school students around the country as part of one of my specific initiatives. And this has helped tremendously because of the level of transition that student group has to endure, moving every 18 to 24 months to different school systems of varying quality. So it really is highly flexible, comprehensive, and adaptive to whatever the needs are, which is what made it a fairly perfect solution set for this mission.
And you mentioned earlier, it's different in Oklahoma for them to be taking an SEA top-down approach. Can you give us a sense of what the response has been at the district and school level to that? Has there been pushback, or has this been more sort of open arms? We're glad this is happening.
Open arms. Like I said, the last report I heard was 90% plus of the LEAs have adopted. Of the 700,000 students, the overwhelming majority of students are being covered by this program. In fact, State Superintendent Hoffmeister even made sure it was deployed in early learning centers. So even if students were not going to be in their regular school buildings, but were going to be in a Head Start facility, that they would have access to the program.
That's
the
great.
Superintendents have clamored for this and said this is exactly what we needed in this moment in time. And I would defer to Secretary Walters if he has any additional insight on that.
We've got areas.
We've heard a lot of great feedback from districts on the ability to, in a time where they're trying to do the distance learning and trying to gain an accurate assessment of where students are, where to specifically remediate. We've heard a lot of great stories from around the state there of utilizing the Exact Path software. So we've seen tremendous success here in the state of being able to deploy that statewide.
The program is highly flexible insofar as we have our own assessment built into the program. Or if schools are already using NWA MAP or Renaissance Star, they can use the assessment data from those programs so they're not double testing their students. We just integrate and then produce learning paths based on that data. Or they can do an on grade level start, which is what we did in New York City because they deployed this in New York City district-wide to all 1.1 million students when COVID first smacked down, but we didn't have time to do assessment. So we just put everyone on learning grade level learning paths, and the computer adaptive nature of the program automatically adjusts up or down depending upon where the learners are after 4 or 5 responses.
Do you see any difference in participation from the learners depending on whether they're in a full-time remote program or they're in person right now?
Yeah, that's actually a great question because we just had a data sharing meeting with the state superintendent last week, and there definitely were leaders and laggards in terms of those who have adopted this and gone full scale and really utilized it. But for a lot of schools, it's brand new. We have not been able to parse the data to determine whether those students who are 100% remote versus blended versus in person. So we're going to look out for that kind of data, Eric, but we don't have that yet. But clearly, some districts have chosen to make this a core part of their learning loss, and some have just used this on the fringes, like most programs.
Yeah. Well, we're about at our second, the end of our second 10-minute session. So I'll turn it over to the audience and see if we've got any questions from participants today.
Eric, this is Tony. Marcus, thank you for the presentation. I'm curious if you can just talk a little bit about the costs of this, whether you as a parent with your son or for a school or district, what that looks like.
So it's a great question, Tony. The normal cost for the program is $44 per student for the year. We dramatically discounted it for both New York City and the state of Oklahoma in response to COVID. And normally the program will fall at a rate of somewhere around $15 to $20 a head. I can tell you it was even less than that in these cases because of the large deployment. It is not sold directly to parents. It is sold through school systems or other partners. It's not intended to be a direct to parent program, although in North Dakota, it is in fact being used that way because the state paid for it and directed us to use it that way.
Could we just dig in on that a little bit? Why not direct to parents? What's the issue there? Well,
our organization has historically been serving LEAs or other educational providers. We've not been a direct to consumer organization. That does require a certain makeup in terms of customer service and the transaction. We do have one program, Study Island, that is deployed to all parents right now nationwide for free. So if any of you, by the way, need additional capabilities for your schools or your parents in your state, we are still offering the program Study Island for free for anyone, and it is able to be utilized and stood up by a parent individually. It's just I guess a market decision, Tony, about how we choose to serve the education community. Bless you.
Great. Thank you, Marcus. Appreciate it.
Certainly, sir.
And Lori, you had a question about the best way to get it rolling in other states. Marcus, how would somebody go about bringing this program to their state?
Actually, like Ghostbusters, just give me a call. We were able to batch roster all of New York in one fell swoop and had all 1.1 million students done in a week. We did all of North Dakota the same way as one batch. In Oklahoma, it was the decision of the state superintendent to go LEA by LEA, so that did take a bit longer when you're talking about 550 LEAs or so. But depending upon what the desired end state is and how it wants to be achieved, we can stand up the program and have it fully implemented with teachers receiving online training within 7 to 10 days.
Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
So is this just for public schools or is it for public, charter, private?
It's a great question. We as an organization, we serve public LEAs, charter management organizations, private schools, any host of individual organizations that provide for education. In the state of Oklahoma, it was the state's decision to only serve the public schools. In North Dakota, it was decided to serve all manner of schools and students regardless.
Other questions from the audience?
Jumping in with a question here. Hello, Marcus.
You look good, brother. I like this. Man, it's a good look for you.
Thanks. Wondering about in these offerings, and I'm sorry if I missed it earlier, are we talking about just core subjects, or are we talking about what other array of subject offerings? How do you all go about kind of CTE curriculum, and is any of that involved? Just want to hear about kind of what the broader menu is.
Great question. So 2 parts. One, ExactPath covers only core math, ELA, and reading. It is the baseline skills. The full array of content is what Ryan Walters, Secretary Walters, did for Learn Anywhere Oklahoma, where the complete library of advanced placement, extreme foreign languages, CTE, the whole shoot and match is now deployed, but those are credit-bearing courses under Learn Anywhere Oklahoma for Ryan. The ExactPath mission was to specifically address learning loss in the core areas of math, ELA, and reading. Did that answer your question, sir?
Sir, yes, sir.
Yeah. So you could say Ryan and Joy were a 1-2 punch. Joy threw the first punch to address the core skills, and Ryan came back with an even bigger left hook to make sure everything else was covered.
Marcus, you mentioned teacher training. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like? What do you have to do to get educators up to speed to use this?
So it's a fairly intuitive program because it was built by educators, quite frankly. It was meant to be this way, and the improvements have been all done as a result of the educators. There are online webinars that can have teachers utilizing this program within a day, but most often what we do is we provide official professional development. Right now is in a Zoom only capacity because no one's traveling, but we can get people stood up pretty fast. It all depends on what I would say the comfort and preparation of the teachers. I know one thing, and as a former and current university guy, teacher prep programs need to come out of this COVID with some serious reforms and making sure that digital education capabilities are a core element of teacher prep programs everywhere, not just a nice to have, but it needs to be a core function of it. And as we see a lot of older educators leave the workforce, either because they don't want to work in this multi-modality environment, or they just have had enough of this, this gives us an opportunity to reshape our workforce to really embrace these capabilities and use them to their full capabilities, full use.
Great. Lori, did you have another question?
Yeah, so can this be implemented district by district, or does the state have to be involved?
Good question.
No, and in fact, before this Oklahoma action, we had only ever deployed it district by district. So Oklahoma represents the first statewide action, North Dakota represents the second, and I anticipate there may be more, but it is originally intended to be a building or district-wide solution set.
And Marcus, we'll make sure that we can connect you with everyone who attends today if you're interested in checking it out for your state. We'll get the contact info out.
Aren't we all going to Boise next week? I thought we were having our summit anyway, right? No, we're not going?
That hurts, Marcus. That really hurts.
I love Boise. I want to go back. Boise, sorry.
We all do very much. I have one. Does anybody else have another question? I'm wondering about, I assume that there's a teacher dashboard component to this, and certainly the student has the app. They can sort of chart their own pathway and have access to the information. What do parents get in terms of access to how their students are doing, where they may be relative to their peers?
Yeah, well, the teacher and parent views are similar now, and the parent view was created as a result of this because we have so many more parents who are directly engaged. That was not the case before, but given the state of online learning at home, we added the parent component. And I can send out a full capabilities brief that includes screenshots of the program to see what that looks like. It shows in very clear fashion what domain and what skills have been mastered and which ones have not. And it gives you in an instant a view of where your learners are.
That's very cool.
And the data tools are quite extensive. So a building leader can aggregate data for all their students and see where the gaps are. The teacher can aggregate data for a class or all their students and decide what's working and what's not. There's an auto grouping feature if you want to do small group instruction where it automatically puts the students who are in the same buckets of their skill development. You don't have to use post-it notes or intuition. You literally hit a button and it automatically does it for you, while still giving the teacher ultimate control if they think, oh, you know, Jason is clearly not that far behind, so we can move him into a different category.
Yep. Jason's never far behind.
It leads the way.
Yeah. Any last questions? Marcus, are you okay if we share what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so let me send you a proper deck that has a more comprehensive view. I can also send you this briefing deck, which was pared down for purposes of time.
Sure.
And anyone I'll send something that should give enough digestible information to satisfy anyone's immediate appetite. And then if anyone wants additional or wants an actual walkthrough briefing to see what it looks like and touch and feel, happy to do that. And because we are huge America Succeeds fans, if any of you would like this program for your own children, you are welcome to do so at no cost.
Oh, that's awesome.
That include grandchildren?
You could, anyone within your sphere, you may have it. So it is a full K-12.
Older than others on this call, so I'm just saying.
It's a full K-12 suite, so wherever your learners are. But if you have folks in your orbit and you think they might benefit from this, or you simply want to observe them doing it, we will happily make that available to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Marcus.
That's awesome.
Sure.
You're going to get some takers out of that offer.
Yeah.
We're going to call that the Amy Gutierrez special because Amy Gutierrez special. That's all.
That sounds right. Well, that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for participating. Next up in our Basecamp, we'll have Guru and what they're doing in North Carolina with our North Carolina affiliate. Very excited to have you all join us for that. We'll be sending around an email with the recording. You can always check it out on our Grateful Ed blog, and please be sure to register for future sessions. We've got Microsoft and Blueprint coming up, and we're in the process of locking down a few other exciting presenters. So look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks again for joining us.
And congrats on all the good work you do. Thank you for all the good work you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus.